Hello there. What is going on, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about tanks, and more tanks. Well, really just two instances of tanks because we've got two new tanks coming to the Clone Wars factions for Star Wars Legion. And they are no joke, my friends. They are monstrously huge and incredibly gorgeous. I did get some close-up video of these at Gen Con 2019. And they're pretty impressive. But we're going to actually look a little bit more at the unit cards and kind of break down what was kind of shown in the awesome little preview articles that FFG put out at the same time that I was at Gen Con. Now, I did not get to these right away. I'm getting to them now. So here is the TX-130 Saber class fighter tank, and it is gorgeous. It is a hovering tank, so it is going to be flying repulsory style, and maybe not quite as tall as your super flying vehicles like your snow speeders and things like that, but it is going to be hovering. Now, with this being as big as it is, I wonder if it will be difficult to balance on that peg or not, or if people will have no problem at all, because something like this that could easily be a little bit forward heavy or whatever, but it's gonna be really, really cool, and I'm excited. I'm really excited to get this thing. I love the eye holes. It almost looks like it's staring you down. When you look at the front of it, and as it comes around again, I'm like, it looks intimidating. It almost looks like this might have been like a precursor to like Imperial Walker designs, right? Because the Republic became the Empire. Spoiler warning. So no, the Saber tank looks great. One of the things you can't really tell from the spread is just how big these are. The ATST base was the biggest base in the game up until not long ago when the Gav tank came out for the Empire. And, well, the Snowspeeder and ATST base, right? And then the Gav came out and it had this even bigger base. And this is even bigger than that. It's hard to really fathom unless you've seen it in person, but if you want to, I'll put a link at the end of the video to some of my Gen Con footage where we are able to look at these bases. It's notched on the sides and in the front and back, and that is there to facilitate sideways movement, so you can strafe with this thing as well as being able to go forward and backward. Very, very cool design space. But it really makes me wonder, when they're doing like this base is like almost the size of maybe a volleyball, and I'm exaggerating just a little bit here, but it's definitely the largest base. It's much larger than you really expect it to be, and it's monstrous. It makes me really wonder how people are going to be building battlefields in the future with bases like this. I mean, they're crazy huge, crazy huge. So it really makes me wonder about things like that. Because, like, let's say you wanted to run two of these. Do you even have room for any terrain at all on your board, right? So I think, what kind of impact, and let me know in the comments below what kind of impact you think giant bases like this are going to have on the game moving forward. It's incredibly huge. Like, one of the things I do when I'm setting up terrain is a lot of times I will try to take like an ATST base and kind of slide it through and make sure we have enough room that we can fit vehicles into certain areas. Now, the Gav tank kind of threw a monkey wrench into my whole system because, I want all those vehicles and those big things to be playable. It's a little easier with something like a snow speeder, that's got speeder and a speeder 2, and it can, ignore a lot of stuff like that. But for something like this, maybe some of the terrain is just meant to say, no, this tank can't move around on the battlefield. It's going to have to stay put. And I think if that happens too often, I feel like that might influence the fun factor of the game, and you don't want to create a negative play experience by having like a tournament set. Like, what will next year's tournaments be like, right? Will the tables be all crowded? Like, the tables at Gen Con this year were phenomenally done, like huge improvements, but there wasn't a whole lot of empty space, right? And I mean, there was some empty space, but not a whole lot. And I feel like maybe next year, when we look at next year's tournaments, once these things become available and are mainstream and everybody's running them, are we going to see, more of a variety, and like some tables are more sparsely densed and some tables are more heavily densed? Or are we going to see, a standard in one way or the other? Or are they just going to ignore the fact that these are big bases and say, well, you brought a giant freaking tank, you brought a bazooka to a knife fight? I don't know. So we're going to have to see. I'm really curious what kind of impact a base this size will have. Now, if we look at the TX-130 Saber class fighter tanks card, we're going to see a lot of interesting stuff about it. First thing is 170 points. 170 points for this heavy tank, and whoo, it's going to be steep, and you're going to probably want more than just this on here, because you have armor, you have Arsenal 2, again with only one weapon, so you're going to want to have more than one gun on there. Hover ground, so this one says you can reverse, strafe, stand by, and you're treated as a ground vehicle by other units. Now, why does that matter? Well, it matters for things like displacement. It matters for things like cover. If you're a ground vehicle, you are, this is going to provide heavy cover. It seems like it would provide heavy cover, even though technically I could still shoot your feet underneath this thing. I believe it's still going to provide heavy cover. So that much is interesting, and actually it'll perform a little differently than maybe a ground vehicle might, because I can imagine in certain cases, if you are tracing line of sight, if you can see, there's a chance you might see somebody underneath. Whereas if it was a ground tank, a true ground tank, like the Gav, for example, it could potentially totally obstruct, and you might not even have a shot if you cannot physically see them at all. So the fact that it is above the base might actually, allow certain shots, whereas other ones, like I haven't really thought of like tracing line of sight underneath a vehicle before. That one sounds kind of interesting. But I guess we'll have to see. It also has outmaneuver, which says you can spend a dodge token to cancel a critical result, or you can spend dodge tokens, plural, to cancel critical results. So that one is interesting, and it has a lot of weak points, though. It's got a weak point 1 for the rear and for both of the sides. So basically, everybody's basically getting impact against you unless they're square in your front arc. So that is something. Now we have no surge of any type here, which is like telling me, okay, I got to put that Imperial Hammer, or I want that Hammer's pilot on there so I can get that surge to hit at least, right? But then again, the weapon has critical 1, so maybe I don't need surge as much, right? It's very interesting. There's gonna be some options there, and you might not get that many surge with 6 dice though, and Arsenal 2, and so you're gonna have more than 6. I know from running ATSTs, surge is really nice to be able to convert, because you hate rolling 6 or more dice and having like four surge in there that you can't do anything with. It's a real nightmare. All right, I've been using the term nightmare a little bit too loosely lately. All right, so now we have 9 hull, 6 resilience, and speed of 2. So this thing can move fairly fast if it wants to, or move at least if it can fit. So yeah, like if you do leave enough space for it, it's going to have a lot of room to go, and that's pretty cool. Now, for upgrades, we're looking at a drive or a pilot. We're going to get a standard hard point upgrade, and there's also this new upgrade type, which looks kind of like a spear or something like that. It's probably not a spear, because I doubt, unless Gungans are meant to be on this tank throwing spears, but it's some type of beam weapon, it looks like. And then we're also going to be running the comms upgrade. Now, from what we can see of the beam weapon, it looks like there's a theme with those. It looks like they're going to handle very much like a lot of hardpoint type weapons, but they have a certain theme. So when we look at some of the upgrades, starting from the left, we can see there's a couple of beam weapons, and they all seem to have cycle. And it's hard to make out exactly what cycle does, but it seems like cycle, based on, we're seeing a lot of cycle stuff coming up, in like the second wave of Clone Wars stuff. That cycle seems to be some type of attack that would require you to exhaust the card, and on any turn that you do not use that card, you can then unexhaust it. That's it. My guess, that seems to be one of the theories of what cycle might actually mean. Basically saying you don't have to recover, but if you just simply opt to use this every other turn, you'll be fine. And that's kind of the theme for a lot of these, these beam, or this new upgrade, this new type of weapon. And that's cool. I mean, like, I'm down with that. We've got some hard points on here that do not appear to have cycle. And so for a tank like this, with Arsenal 2, and that, by the way, that main gun is pretty good. Right, when we go back, it's right there. 2 red, 2 black, 2 white, critical, 2 impact, 2, and fixed front. But if you got Arsenal 2, you're going to want to shoot with two weapons. So my guess is it looks like the regular hard points will be slightly weaker weapons that you fire when your cycle weapons are on cooldown. All right, so it's like I got the big shot one turn, and then the slightly less impressive shot the second turn, and then the big shot. Or if you want to save point, but the thing is that's going to be expensive because you're equipping effectively 2 extra guns to this tank that's already 170 points. So you might really be looking at a very, very, very expensive loadout here. Now, as far as our pilots, now this is kind of cool because we're getting Ayla Sakura, who is cool, and that means you're going to get models for her. And now in her artwork too, she's almost fully standing out of the tank, like she's standing on top, and in full like inspiring presence, right? So she has Inspire 2, which is good. And it looks like she's going to have Field Commander, or at least some condition that gives her Field Commander. And Field Commander is basically saying that when somebody else is nominated, when you play a command card, you may select yourself as the nominated commander. And that's basically what it seems like. Is all that's really letting you do is let you issue orders based on her location as opposed to based on somebody else. So in theory, if I'm taking Obi-Wan and I run him behind enemy lines and then play Hello There, which is a great card, right? Let's say I play Hello There. But Obi-Wan's like way far forward and I have a whole bunch of troops in the back of the field. Well, then I can, on my next turn, I can play some other command card. Maybe Obi-Wan can't reach everybody, but that's no problem. I measure from Ayla Sakura, who in this Saber tank, and then she gets to give them out. I'm guessing that's what Field Commander lets you do. Lets you kind of bypass range restrictions. I'm not sure. It's unclear if Field Commander is really going to give you any other bonus because you're not going to be able to reference Ayla Sakura's courage value because, well, the tank itself doesn't have any courage value, and I doubt you'll be able to use the resilience as a courage value. That'd be insane by almost every standard. But we're also getting Plo Koon. Can't quite see exactly what he does. Most of his text is hidden. And we're also getting some type of veteran-looking clone pilot. The veteran clone pilot is not restricted. He's not a unique, but he is restricted to, it looks like the TX, the tank, as well as probably being Republic only as well, but really if he's restricted to the tank, then that's all you need. Unless, of course, they decided to reprint this tank for the Rebels or something like that someday, so it might make sense to say, he's restricted both this faction and this vehicle. That's kind of how they do that. But the reason they made him not unique is in case you do want to run 2 of these tanks, you can potentially put him on both of them. So that seems like an option there. But yeah, some interesting upgrades. I can't wait to see the models for Plo Koon and Ayla Sakura, and I hope that doesn't mean that we're not getting them as Jedi minis as well. I like the idea that they're putting 2 well-known Jedi in the game this early without having to completely overload us with commanders. I like that we're getting different forms of different people, and hopefully we will continue to get these folks as Jedi down the road because I would love to have Ayla Sakura and Plo Koon. They're not at the very, very top of my list, but they're definitely in my top 10. I really want to see Mace Windu and Kit Fisto. Those are the 2 that I'm at the top of my list that I'm looking forward to, at least for the Republic. Now we also have the AAT. Oh yes, you might remember this lovely tank from Episode 1. And here's a good look at the base too. You can see those notches all around. This one looks like it's going to be even more like back heavy, if anything else, right? Like getting it to balance on that little stand looks. I mean, I'm sure they will. It'll be weighted. You might actually have to put some weights in the front, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see how it goes. They could have put more plastic in the front to make it balanced. Of course, if you glue it well enough, you shouldn't have too much of a problem. But this one will be really interesting because obviously you're gonna want to. I could see a lot of people trying to pick it up by the back, and then maybe I don't know if your glue will hold too well. So we're gonna have to see. But it looks cool. It looks cool. Same size base as the other tank, so we have the same exact problem in that it's huge. Now, I don't really anticipate us, taking these tanks and just charging them straight at the enemy. They kind of want to stay in the back lines. I think that's going to be kind of the play style for these, and that's why you have long range on a lot of those weapons. But still, I mean, how long before somebody takes like that makes a Theed Palace, Naboo battlefield? And I know some people are already working on that. I've seen some like production shots, but like it makes that long one where you're doing like the long march and you're just taking these guys and running them down the street, approaching the palace's front gates, right? Like that would be a really, really great battlefield. It would work great for this game, and they have it in Battlefront 2. Also, they have a battlefield on that exact that main avenue. It'd be just just the thought of like two of these, like a whole bunch of droids like marching down slowly, would be really cool. You'd have to have a lot of wide open area to make that work too, which is awesome. All right, so let's look at the AAT Trade Federation battle tank. All right, so first off, a couple of extra things. Now looks like it's 170 points, only speed 1. Red defense die, no surge. Stats very, very similar to our last tank. Very, very similar. 9 hull, 6 resilience. A lot of balance between these two. We're also getting Arsenal 2. We're also getting armor. We're also getting hover ground. All right. Little difference in the weak points, though. The sides aren't as weak, but we have weak point 2 for the rear. So anybody who manages to get behind this thing is going to be getting impact 2. So that's all the more reason why you definitely don't want to send this guy too far forward. So I like that they've done that they definitely want you pointed at the battlefield, which is going to kind of de-incentivize you from running all the way up into the battlefield. I want to talk a little bit more about hover ground, because it's a hover with a colon and then ground. So in theory, you could have hover air or something like that. Like if they were to do helicopters or something like that, I can imagine those being... Obviously, there won't be physical helicopters, but I mean, air transport that are slow moving, not fighter jets, but something using that helicopter role. We saw the Empire has those helicopter-esque hover transports. They use them heavily in the later seasons of Star Wars Rebels. Obviously, the LAT would be the Republic's version of some type of helicopter thing that could be considered hover, without it having to have speeder where it has to do that compulsory move, like a helicopter wouldn't have to, right? So I like the idea of hover, it being a repulsor vehicle or something like that that doesn't have to do that speeder compulsory movement. But yeah, the way when they have words like that have that colon, it's always giving you that open ability to like, well, this is the format, but they can insert a new type. You could even have a hover vehicle that's, well, you probably couldn't have a water-based hover. You could have maybe a floating submarine. No, I'm getting a little too crazy. Like this. I don't know, do the planet core, something like that. They probably won't do anything other than hover ground or maybe hover air at some point, but it is pretty cool. So we've got Arsenal 2 here also, AI attack. So we're familiar with that from the droids already. I think when you have a heavy support in your army, you're going to want to give them the order anyway, just because you're not going to have very many of those, and so you can pull from the pile with other stuff. But with the droids, it might be a little bit trickier because you want to give at least one to a B1 battle droid so they can kind of chain all of your orders. So, for something like this, granted, attacking is going to be a lot easier when you've got up to range 4 for a lot of stuff. So you'll be all right, I suppose. Now, they do have a close range weapon, a 1 to 2, which is 3 black dice, and then they have the artillery laser cannon, which is 2 to 4, 4 red dice, critical 2, high velocity, which is fun. High velocity, we see that on the sniper rifles, and that means I believe it was errated, but I believe it says if all weapons in your attack pool have high velocity, then they can't dodge can't be spent to remove results. Thereabouts. I think it was like originally it was like if this is the only weapon. I don't remember if which way it is, but I remember reading it and saying, oh, why do they say all weapons? You couldn't have 2 snipers in the same one. And I remember thinking, oh, that's probably good future proofing, because it looks like some of the new weapons that we can put on this thing may have high velocity as well. Now we can take a pilot. Now we don't get a regular hard point upgrade here, but we do get 2 new beam or spear type weapons as well as the comms upgrade. So that is pretty cool. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of our upgrades here. So with these guys, we're getting a tactical droid pilot, which does let you lose AI attack, which is really cool. And I totally dig that they're giving you options, and he's like a smart pilot, so you're not bound by that anymore. I like that a lot. You're also getting another type of, well, you're getting 3 pilots altogether. Now, we can't see who, like, the third one is. We have an OOM type pilot that's not unique. And then we have one that's unique. It's really, really hard to see who that, that third pilot is if we're going from the right. It's going to be some type of named character, though, and whether it's a unique droid or if it's going to be somebody a little more familiar and a little more market appeal, like if it's like maybe Asajj Ventress or something like that, would be really cool. But it's pretty hard to see, and whoever they are, they probably have a short name, so my guess is it's probably a droid of some type. I could see it being Newt Gunray. That would be kind of cool. But who knows? Who knows? All right, so now for our beam weapons. Oh, well, there we are. We've got, let's see. We've got cycle, looks like, on all of them. Which, again, I'm going to do one big shot and then one small shot. It's like reloading, all right? Like, I get that. You got some kind of bunker buster, armor piercing, and then something else with high velocity. So, starting from the left, our bunkers got scatter and fixed front and cycle and blast, it looks like. So that one will be a really good one for going against troops. The middle one has impact 3, it looks like. And that one obviously looks like that will be really good against going against vehicles. And then our third one looks really nasty. 2 to 4, some type of critical, and some other number. So that will be nice. High velocity as well. So again, it's pretty good if you're going up against somebody really far away, and they got dodges. Really good against rebels too. That is pretty cool. All right, guys. Well, that's it. I think I don't know which one I like better. I think I'm leaning towards the AAT Trade Federation battle tank as my preferred version, really because they're that much more iconic, and they also are one step closer to me replicating the Battle of Naboo. Bring on the Gungan army. All right, that's all I've got for you today. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, have a great day.